You go to bed, you get crappy sleep. You wake up the next day, you're obliterated. So what do? You reach for a cup, you sip that cup, you drink it, you feel a little bit better, but since you're just so fatigued, next thing you know, you're having like 2, 3 cups, then you're pushing those cups out into the afternoon, and then you see where I'm going with this. Then that night, you don't sleep that well because your heart's pounding, you're peeing, you can't relax. Maybe you have anxiety because you just had like 400 milligrams of caffeine past 3 p.m. Maybe you tacked on some pre-workout because you're feeling spicy that night and you wanted to hit a PR. And next thing you know, you ain't sleeping until 2 a.m. Welcome back to the channel. How many of you guys are absolutely addicted to caffeine? I was, and it was starting to get completely out of hand, on the fine line, probably pushing the border of abuse, with my daily consumption approaching about 1 gram per day, which is 1,000 milligrams. And I was starting to experience a lot of negative externalities: decreased sleep, poor hydration, poor gut health, etc., dependency. The list goes on and on, right? And holistically, when you kind of zoom out on this whole view of the situation, it really adds up over time. And it does have negative impacts, whether some people want to believe it or not. I know there's a lot of people out there that believe that caffeine is like amazing, it has no negative externalities, etc., etc. And I want to tell you that you're wrong. I want to share with you guys my experience with this dopamine detox and this journey that I'm on. And I'm kind of at this midway point. I wanted to do 100 days with no caffeine, and I'm actually at day 67. Little rough in the beginning. Obviously, withdrawals are pretty standardized: headaches, crappy energy, etc. But what have I learned from this experience or journey so far now that I'm approaching a little more than 2 months? Was it worth it? That answer is yes. Now, when you're considering this entire mosaic, I want to start off first with sleep quality because I think it's the most important and probably has the largest impact as far as positive benefits go. Now, I am sleeping a lot more soundly, definitely more deeply, and I'm feeling a lot more physical recovery. But interestingly enough, I'm actually sleeping less and I feel like I'm sleeping more, which is definitely a good sign that the quality of my sleep is massively improved. And I do use a sleep tracker, so I have a pretty good idea on kind of the impacts. And some of it is pretty eye-opening. Obviously, here and there, I do get a bad night of sleep because I'm just like working a lot and etc. But the increased sleep quality has a bunch of positive benefits that come along with that as well, right? Like increased cognitive function, increased hormonal balance and levels, and increased energy and increased physical recovery, like I mentioned. So that in itself is a whole gamut of discussion, and there's a ton of nuance there. But I want to start off with that and get that out of the way, and we can talk about some other things later. But super duper important. And I actually want to share a quick study kind of debunking the myth of a nightcap and how there's a lot of individuals, maybe you know them, friends, family, that don't believe caffeine has a negative effect. And anyway, the famous line is, oh, I can have a cup of coffee, with my dinner and I sleep just fine. Well, do you? Do you? Because the studies prove otherwise. Very famous study. They gave a nightcap caffeine in the form of coffee after dinner, and they studied these individuals' sleep quality. So not only the length, the quality, the REM, how deep, the cycles, everything, right? So the number one thing that was actually impacted was the quality of their deep sleep. And deep sleep is very easy to measure due to the brain waves being very dramatic. And their deep sleep was affected by about 20% decrease in the quality. If you actually put that in perspective, that is about the equivalent of you aging 50 years. Sounds very dramatic, but obviously this is something to consider, especially if you're an avid coffee drinker at night or even in the late afternoon, considering the half-life is 6 to 7 hours, depending on your genetics and how well your body can absorb and metabolize caffeine. Now, Getting into more of the nuances of the positive benefits of quitting caffeine. Caffeine is classified as a psychoactive stimulant. Okay. So it's stimulating your mind, but it's not just stimulating your mind, right? You're getting an increased elevation in your heart rate. You're getting an increased gut mobility. It is a diuretic. So you're peeing more. You're getting increased urination. You might sweat a little more if you're kind of like a sweaty person, probably from the increase of heart rate. So holistically, if you're losing more fluid, you are peeing more from this diuretic aspect, your heart rate's increased. Now you're getting more dehydrated. But on top of that, caffeine is also a vasoconstrictor. So now you're having less blood flow and you're dehydrated to top it off. Does that sound conducive to silly pumps in the gym? Absolutely not. So obviously you see where I'm going with this. My pumps in the gym were absolutely intense. A lot more mind muscle connection, probably due to the fact that I'm more hydrated. I'm not flushing out as much fluid through my body, and I'm just getting like a lot more just like contraction. And I love that. Who doesn't love that? Also, when I'm walking around day to day in my normal day, I'm definitely noticing I'm a lot more vascular. Part of that is I'm a little bit leaner than I was, but not to that degree, if that kind of makes sense. Another funny kind of correlation aspect to the negative impact on sleep and the excessive urination, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, is you lay down, you get nice and cozy in bed, you just doze off, and oh, crap, I have to take a whiz. So you get up, you pee, you lay back down in bed. Next thing you know, you're tossing and turning for like 45 minutes. Well, there goes that night of sleep, right? And then to top it off, you start getting in this perpetual cycle, especially when you're an avid caffeine user like I was. And I'm sure you may be familiar with this, is you go to bed, you get crappy sleep. You wake up the next day, you're obliterated. So what do? You reach for a cup. You sip that cup, you drink it. You feel a little bit better, but since you're just so fatigued, next thing you know, you're having like 2, 3 cups. Then you're pushing those cups out into the afternoon. And then you see where I'm going with this. Then that night, you don't sleep that well because your heart's pounding, you're peeing, you can't relax. Maybe you have anxiety because you just had like 400 milligrams of caffeine past 3 p.m. Maybe you tacked on some pre-workout because you're feeling spicy that night and you wanted to hit a PR. And next thing you know, you ain't sleeping until 2 a.m. So then what happens the next day? And the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and it just keeps going on and on and on. It's a positive feedback loop, but it's giving you a negative effect. Wrap your brain around that one really quick. I know I said it quickly. So I was definitely trying to get away from that. And that was my main motivation behind getting off of stimulants and just abusing them excessively. And now that I'm kind of past this, I would say hump stage where I'm kind of in this nirvana state where I'm kind of coasting and I'm feeling good and I'm having great cognitive benefits. My energy levels are stable. My mood is stable. My sleep is good. My hormones are better. I'm more hydrated, better pumps in the gym, better contraction, etc., etc. When you really pull back and just visualize this entire mosaic of positive, flowing benefits from quitting caffeine, would I ever go back to using it consistently? And I think the answer to that is an obvious no. Do I miss it? Absolutely. The smell of coffee still triggers me, especially a freshly brewed espresso. It just kills me. And part of it is the social aspect of drinking a cup of joe or getting a cup of coffee with your coworkers, or hey, we're having a meeting, but let's grab, some Pete's before, some Starbucks or some Phil's or etc. The social aspect of drinking coffee with others or my significant other or family, etc., is one thing I do kind of miss, especially when you're kind of drinking it, you're sipping it, and you're feeling good, you're getting dopamine and having a nice conversation, and you're just feeling great, right? But it's short lived, and there's a lot of negative externalities that you're not thinking about on the back end, and especially on the habitual, consistent usage of a stimulant that has a long half-life in the body, when all is said and done, you can't really get away from those, right? And for me personally, this has been one of the most eye-opening experiences, and I've definitely got a lot of positive, you know, a lot of positive, like, just feeling from it personally. And I also kind of like it because it's a challenge, right? I love coffee a lot, and I just find something kind of fulfilling about kind of going against my own mental grain and kind of finding those inner demons or those little battles in my head on a daily basis. It's something I just kind of enjoy, and I don't know, to each his own. But down to the nitty gritty, I want to know how much coffee or caffeine in milligrams you're consuming. Um, it's definitely a huge part of American culture, right? Just caffeine consumption, cup of joe, blah, blah, get your day rolling. Um, if you guys are going to be using it, I highly do suggest that you postpone your consumption from early morning so you can let your cortisol naturally drop, and that will avoid that afternoon crash. That was something I was doing previously, but like I said, I was pushing my usage way out into the afternoon, and it was just completely screwing things up. So just kind of wrap this video up on top. I will give you guys another update on this journey. I definitely want to hit 100 days with no caffeine. So obviously day 67% of the way there. But I definitely will not be returning to my old ways and falling back into that negative rut when it comes to that habitual abuse of stimulants. But drop something in the comments below. I want to know how much you guys are drinking. What's your routine? What do you like? And do you think it affects you negatively? Are you that type of person who could just slam an espresso like post dinner and just like pass out at like 10 p.m.? That definitely was not me, even though I was consuming a lot of caffeine, so my tolerance was pretty high. But yeah, super curious. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys soon.